said, my name is Tim Ketterman. I am the VP of Operations for Adaptive Medical Partners. Adaptive is a medium-sized retained recruiting firm, and it's in this space that I've spent my entire 16 years in the industry. So I came up as a recruiter, but over the last few years, I've been focusing primarily on business development while still overseeing both sides of our firm. So though the vast majority of my experience has been with a medium-sized firm, I've been part of startup phases where we've had fewer than 5 people in the firm. So I'm confident, I'm hoping that today's topic will be relevant no matter what type of firm you are, because the realities of today's unique landscape are sort of impacting all of us in similar ways, which was indicated by the survey results, which Bob just mentioned. In those results, it stated that 60 to 80% of respondents were reporting slowdowns of some kind within their business as a direct result of COVID-19. So let's start with this. If I was to ask for a virtual show of hands of anyone on this call who accounted for a global-wide pandemic in their 2020 growth plan and strategy, how many hands would we see up? My guess is not many. If your hand is up, then you should probably be doing this presentation instead of myself. One thing I can say is that you notice is my hand sure as heck wasn't up. And I mean, how could you plan for this? The fact is that you couldn't. So sure, we all have contingency plans built in for the ebbs and flow in the market. But COVID-19, a worldwide pandemic, the global economy basically shutting down, there's not a chance anyone fully prepared for this as we were coming in for 2020. Coronavirus is wreaking havoc on the global economy, and healthcare recruiting is not immune. 70% of those of you who were surveyed reported that clients are putting a significant percentage of recruiting on hold. As recruiters, we're seeing a seismic shift sort of to virtual interviews, which is new, at least to us. And as business development reps, we're finding new business and frankly, in some cases, just simply new client engagement as difficult or challenging as it's ever been. So what can we do? What can you do? I know we can't see each other, but I'm going to ask a very simple question. And that question is this: do you consider yourself open-minded? And if that answer is yes, then I would imagine most everybody did answer yes. But if your answer is yes, then I'd like to make just a small suggestion. And that suggestion is this, is that downturns in the market always create opportunities. And by taking proactive steps now, by playing offense instead of defense, you can put your firm, or if you're a recruiter or BD rep on this call, your personal book of business into a more secure position, which will allow each of us to sort of maintain, but also recover faster once this crisis is over. This will allow us to recapture the lost revenue as owners or lost commissions as consultants, recruiters, or business development reps. So how do we do that? Well, that kind of takes me into our topic for today's discussion, which is all about the snapback and what you should do today to maximize those opportunities when it happens. Now, sort of sidebar, full disclosure, considering all that's going on today and how we're all kind of feeling, I actually felt a more appropriate topic for this presentation was the Recruiter's Guide to the Zombie Apocalypse, but I was rightfully, if not somewhat begrudgingly, overruled by the powers that be. So you kind of win some, you kind of lose some, and that's just how it goes. So to get back to kind of what is the snapback? Well, in our office, it's become the rallying cry for our entire production staff. So technically, snapback is a term most often cited by Wall Street analysts to describe a sudden rebound or recovery of prices in the stock market. More simply put, all snapback means is a sudden recovery or bounce back in the market. Obviously, there are a number of applications in our business for snapback, but for the purposes of this presentation today, I want to focus on sort of the 3 basic levels of most recruiting firms. Regardless of your size, if you're working a 360 desk or just one side of the business, those 3 levels we're going to look at are recruiting, business development, or marketing, depending on how you title. And then, of course, the firm as a whole, the organization, the entity. So let's take a step back and sort of discuss sort of a personal story on why the snapback has become the rallying cry for our team personally. Well, in the survey of the NAPR members that Bob mentioned, there was a response in there that work from home had increased from 27 to 90% across the board. I know for our firm specifically, we're located here in Dallas, we made a decision back on March 12th to send our staff home for that day, and it just turned into our shelter-in-place work-from-home model that everybody's doing right now without sort of no end in sight, and none of us really know. Frankly, full disclosure, that was a really tough adjustment, not only for our leadership, but also for our staff as well, and I have to commend them for adjusting. 2 months ago, if you were to survey our consultants, they would probably say, if they had an honest moment, if you could guarantee them it was completely confidential, that they hated the activity tracker, the dial report, the phone time, all the KPIs that sort of tell you what you're doing on a day-to-day basis. You know, the funny thing is, though, is as we were adjusting to this work from home, kind of 1 week into it, we started getting feedback that, I don't know if you could say they were longing for it, but they were sort of eager and thirsty for some kind of system that tracked dials and phone time, just tracked activity, because it's what they were used to. It's what they were used to when they're in our sales pit. They're looking up at the board and they know what they're doing. And with uncertain times, we felt it was our obligation as leaders to provide them with some sense of normalcy. Since we don't usually use a voice over IP system, we had to go out and find and invest in an internet-based sales and dialing system so our sales consultants could use it and kind of get a feel to maybe what used to be normal. Now, I don't know if they would all say that they loved it, but we've always been a pretty tech-forward firm, and we have a lot of early adopters who work for us. So a couple of days of figuring things out, and we've gotten a lot of feedback that that particular system, they would love to carry that over when we get back to the office. Now, the point isn't about the system. The point is our teams, they just wanted to know how to measure themselves, because we were all in this world of uncertainty. We didn't know what direction was up and where we needed to go next. You know, as recruiters or BD reps, success in our industry, at least from my perspective, has always been kind of a simple math problem from left to right. As a recruiter, you know that it takes so many presentations to set 3 or 4 interviews conducted per month to find that placement. And as a BD rep, you know it takes 10 to 15 meetings per month to find that 5 to 6 pendings that lead to the 2 or 3 new contracts per month that you're chasing. But the reality of the market today is that those numbers may not hold up in the short term. So after the business, from all the work that we did in January and February went up on the board, our teams, just like yours, were left with finding new business opportunities. This is why the Snapback has become our rallying cry, because it was becoming increasingly difficult to find wins. So we had to just redefine what a win was for our teams. Yeah, we all need to put in as much effort as possible to find business today. That's how you sustain. But we also need to, sorry, there was a note that came up on my screen. So we also need to take into consideration our pipeline and sort of put those into silos of business that we can close today and business that we are then building for the Snapback. So what that means is we are asking more of our teams and ourselves than we ever had before. Not only do they need to create as many opportunities today that they can close today, but they also have to put just as much effort into creating just as many opportunities for them to close after the Snapback. This has given them a target, something to work towards, and a belief that if they handle their business today, everything that they're setting up today, they will have something to work towards and themselves be able to recover either the lost commissions, lost revenue, lost GM, however you're paid to provide for their families, and then lost revenue for the organizations. This means that they don't sit on their hands all day to take advantage of the work from home model, but instead they have a goal of how they can set themselves up for what I suspect will be a 90-day sprint right after the Snapback. And don't fool yourselves in believing that it isn't going to be a sprint. I think that personally, those individuals who are using this time wisely today are going to be able to take advantage of that sprint and make up for the deals they didn't get during this downtime in the market. That is what the Snapback means to us as an organization and hopefully to our teams. Listen, I do feel like there is an opportunity to be hopeful that all of us can take advantage of the Snapback. You just have to know where to look. For example, Staffing Industry Analysis, or SIA, recently released its latest U.S. staffing forecast report. Those findings project that the staffing industry as a whole will see a 21% decline in total staffing revenue for 2020, which means that the industry-wide staffing industry is predicted to reach about $119 billion in total revenue this year. That's across all specialties. That's down from 151 billion it reached last year. Now, you might ask yourself, where in the heck is the hope in all that, right? Well, that same survey suggested and said that the only staffing skill segments projected to grow this year are related to healthcare. Now, a lot of this projection is focused on nursing and locums and travelers for obvious reasons, but the fact remains that healthcare is the one segment in the entire staffing industry showing promise. To me, that says hope and opportunity. Additionally, this same report also projects that the industry as a whole is projected to return to significant growth going back into 2021, which also suggests that there is going to be a return to business and a snapback for us to all catch up. So let's stick to the facts. We are still in the midst of the greatest physician shortage in our industry's history right now. A client's need for an orthopedic surgeon in February has not changed. They still need that surgeon or family medicine provider or pulmonary critical care doctor, you name it, the needs have not changed. However, if you're waiting now to foster that relationship for when things bounce back, you're already going to be too late, because clients right now are lining up organizations so that they are ready to initiate those searches the minute that they are able. Same on the candidate side for recruiters. There are plenty of physicians out there who are talking to us right now, or candidates I should say, and lining them up for, if they're comfortable interviewing now, great, or if they're comfortable interviewing in the future, that's important as well. What we've done is we've set up our organization from a pending perspective into multiple silos. You have your pendings for today, and then you have your pendings for the snapback. And we've got to be looking at both and working to build both. So how do you take advantage of the snapback? Well, let's get into the nuts and bolts of it. So for our firm, Adaptive, our leadership broke this process down into 4 phases: react, evaluate, build, and then the snapback. All right, so I'm going to take a moment and actually share my screen so we can take a look at these 4 phases in more detail. As you will see when we break this down, I'm using some broader themes here. So however, you know, what size you are, regardless if you're an owner or a team or department leader, a recruiter, a business development rep, no matter what size your firm is, I'm hoping that you should be able to apply some of these themes to your own personal book of business or organization. So let me go ahead and share my screen here. All right. All right, so let's start with those 4 phases. Here they are, and I'm going to break them down individually, but there's react, which is sort of the initial response. This phase probably, hopefully, is already in process with your firm. There's evaluate. That's the short-term slowdowns in the industry that allow us to sort of take advantage and reflect and self-evaluate ourselves. There's the build of momentum. There's the building the pipeline that you need to prepare for the snapback. And then there's the snapback itself, the executing and accelerating the new strategic initiatives that you've put together right now to take advantage of when the market does choose a snapback. So let's go through these sort of one by one. Let's start with react. So like I mentioned, I'm going to spend less time on this particular portion of the presentation because this probably should have been done 2-4 weeks ago. This is the immediate real-time response. Okay, how to stabilize, how to stabilize the current business. So no matter where you're at, if you're a team leader, if you're a VP of operations, if you're a entry-level recruiter or business development rep, we should be reaching out to current customers to better align with their immediate contingency plans. Not necessarily their immediate needs, those are important as well, but how are they handling interviewing, hiring, new business, repeat business? What do the forecasts look like? What does normal look like for them? It's going to be a little bit different for everybody. So we aren't going to all snap back at the same time. Certain areas of the country are going to adjust differently. You should know is how an organization is going to choose to interview. Are they going to choose to offer a job off a virtual interview? Because virtual interviews are becoming more prevalent. Obviously, converting your communications to a digital or virtual platform so your sales teams can be as effective as possible. Maintaining that momentum with the current BD and recruiting pipeline. Those candidates you're talking to, those potential leads that you're talking to, they need to know that it's business as usual. And then equipping your business or your recruiting and business development teams with the digital and virtual selling tools that they need to be successful. And also, in addition to that, creating the wartime, is what we called it, messaging for those clients and candidates. So what I mean by that is, within about 24 hours of us evolving into the work from home model, we wanted to put out messaging because our biggest concern and what we feared the most is that current clients, business that we're relying on, might be coming to slow things down and to put searches on hold because of the uncertainty. So we wanted messaging for our recruiters and our business development reps that if an organization called or a client called, they knew how to handle it and it was consistent across the organization. And I think that was a really good step from our perspective, because we've only had about 5 to 10% of our searches actually go on hold. So I'm hoping that messaging was part of that benefit. Moving into the next phase is evaluate. So the short-term slowdown, it really does provide the time to reflect and reevaluate. All right. So reassessing business plans and growth strategies, evaluate your operations, the platforms that you're using, processes, find those efficiencies. This particular phase, I like to say, it's really about looking in the mirror, assessing your sales team and your operations team and make those changes if necessary, repurpose individuals if they're going to be more effective elsewhere. Engaging with customers to reprioritize your business based on their needs. Obviously, you should always be evaluating the market for new opportunities for growth and diversification, but right now is a great time to do it as any. And then the last point is more of a challenge to the individual sales reps, is the opportunity for them to learn new skills, which they can deploy when the snapback occurs. Giving you a real world example of that is, as a firm, our business development department has always been sort of face-to-face meeting. I think a lot of recruiting firms are like that. Not all of them, but a lot of them are. So our sales were about calling to set up the meetings and going out and presenting and selling in person. And when travel was taken off the table and those in-person meetings were taken off the table, we flipped pretty quick to virtual meetings. But one of the things that we learned through the process is that our phone skills to actually bring deals in over the phone weren't as sharp as our skills when we were in front of people. Folks that we've had with us for years were less effective over the phone. So we had to really sharpen that axe. And what we hope is the unintended benefit of this whole situation is when we get back to whatever normal is, not only will they be able to bring in the business that they always brought in when they were meeting with folks, but maybe we can find 1 to 2 extra contracts per consultant per quarter that they're able to bring in over the phone because they've sharpened that skill and they've added that arrow to their arsenal. These are the things that, whether you're a recruiter or business development rep, it should all be about improving your skills now. As leaders and owners of organizations, there's always so much to do. You're always busy. There's always things you want to do, but you always kick the can. Because you're never going slow enough. You're always trying to drive business. Well, we've sort of gotten this natural slowdown, which maybe gives us a chance to take a breath as an organization, reinvest in things aggressively, play a little offense instead of defense, and do some of those things that you've been putting off, changing that website, changing messaging, changing materials. There is a chance for your organization to be completely reinvented and reborn when this thing goes back to normal after the snapback, if you use this time wisely and truly evaluate yourself either as an organization or as an individual producer. Phase 3 would be building momentum. So this is where you have to rely on your producers. Your recruiting and BD engagement must be at an all-time high. Like we talked about, recruiting must focus on candidate engagement, build a pipeline of candidates who are committed to taking those steps when things do go back to normal, as well as candidates who are willing to do things now. Some of the surveys results suggested that engagement might be down. We've actually been very fortunate in our recruiters are reporting that actual candidate engagement is at an all-time high. Our phone time to dial ratio is completely flipped because we're spending a lot more time on the phone talking with interested candidates because they don't maybe have anything else to do. So they're taking advantage of those things. Consulting with clients on the systems and inefficiencies to take advantage of the snapback. I've been in this business a long time. I've worked with a lot of different organizations and there's always bottlenecks to the process. Well, now's a good time to add value to the organizations you're working with and maybe provide some suggestions on, hey, if we make this a little more efficient throughout the process, the candidates we're losing, we're not going to lose once we snap back. Then business development is creating those short-term and long-term opportunities, securing the commitment from clients when we do snap back. This is what we're holding our folks to. We feel that you always want to have 5 to 6 people telling you yes, so you can produce within the month that you're at. We're also asking that we need to, build our COVID pipeline. And those are folks that say, hey, we'd love to do business with you. We've all heard this, but we just don't have the authority to sign right now. Well, we're asking all of our individual reps to find 10 or more of those individuals that they can place into their COVID pipeline. So when things do snap back, not only will we have stuff current, but we have an opportunity to call on those individuals that we can maybe catch up, and maybe our production goes up by 125, 130% for that 90-day sprint, and then we can catch up and make up for these months lost. And then the sort of unpopular aspect is that no matter if you are prospecting over social media, if you're exclusively over LinkedIn, if you're a phone-heavy organization, if you do a lot of emails, whatever the situation may be, the daily activity, the daily KPIs, the daily opportunities to engage with folks, we feel need to be sitting at 125% of what normal used to be right now, because it takes more to get the same outcome. And then the final stage is the snapback itself. This is where we are able to execute and accelerate the new strategic initiatives to capitalize on the market resurgence. So basically this, make sure your team is agile and prepared for that sprint. Right now, everybody's sort of working from home. We're all cooped up. We're not getting the social opportunities as we used to get. So there's going to be an inclination that when things go back to normal, hey, now it's time to go out and sort of relax a little bit. And I'm here to say that it's the exact opposite. When we get past this and we go back to normal, we're talking about this is a 90-day sprint. It's not time for vacations. It's time to go chase down all this business that we've lost. You've got to make sure we're on the same page. We have those pipelines built. And for that 90 days, everybody's completely aligned and the ship is moving in the same direction. You also have to have your staffing prepared for pent-up demand and clients expecting those immediate responses and results. There are organizations that are basically kind of stiff-arming us in a hurry up and wait situation. When they're ready to sign, they're also going to expect immediate results, and recruiting doesn't necessarily work that way unless you're building that pipeline of candidates right now that maybe you can produce some quicker results and outcomes to sort of appeal to that demand. And then finally, sort of the last stage here is embracing the possibility of a new normal and that business might be conducted differently. So here's what I mean by that. It could be business as usual. We could go back and it's just going to be just like it was before we entered into March and April and May here. But if that's a possibility, you also have to be open-minded to the possibility that it won't be. We had the opportunity here in Dallas. Mark Cuban was interviewed last week. It was an hour-long town hall over the radio, no commercial interruptions. And basically the topic of the town hall is what happens next. And he mentioned a lot of different things, but one of the things that really stuck with me was what he said was that downturns in the market are times for entrepreneurs and innovators to take advantage. And what he also said is those organizations who are simply holding on and looking forward to when things go back to normal are likely not going to be around as long as those organizations who are prepared for things to go back to normal and prepared to accept whatever is new in the organization or in the business. Small example of that. I've seen this chattered all over LinkedIn and within some channels I am with other recruiting firms. Virtual interviews, I think, are going to be here to stay. I have a long-term client that I've been working with for 10 to 12 years. And the CEO has already mandated that she loves the virtual interview process and wants to try to implement it into their standard recruiting. Well, that's going to prolong the sales cycle, what is normal. That already is impacting what's next. So you have to be prepared for both potential inevitabilities. Those are the 4 phases of the snapback. I guess I'd like to wrap up with this and leave you with sort of one of my favorite quotes, which is this: life is 10% of what happens to you and 90% of how you react to it. Well, COVID-19 is testing us. It's knocked us down. So how we react and prepare for the snapback is completely up to us.